Hi, everyone. Welcome back to part two. um, yeah, so we had a little technical issues here. I don't know if it was Facebook or the other service I use called Be Live that just disconnected all of a sudden. Hopefully this doesn't happen again. And hopefully we're able to reconnect with some of you folks out there because we didn't even get into the good stuff yet. But I think this also resonates with everything we're going through right now of just rolling with the punches and, you know, knowing that there's going to be a few hiccups. I haven't used this technology very often. This is only the second time. Last time it was fine, and this time it was had some bumps. But I think there's some elements about live streaming unrelated to kind of the challenges I face. Well, I mean, related probably to the challenges we face today, but also some of the things to consider. Not only what's going on right now, but as a planner, I mean, the reason why I really wanted to have this conversation with All Star Group and you, Richard, is I think that there are some elements of stuff that I know because I've had a little bit of experience with, and then there's some elements that I'm not the most knowledgeable on. And I think we all want to be set up for success because there's definitely going to be a lot more of this coming into fruition for a number of reasons. So just wanted to talk about maybe what you guys have going on right now with live streaming and why how you're seeing like why it's more important than ever to kind of incorporate it, not only because we have a shelter in place order, but maybe some other reasons why it might be poignant for a number of groups, whether it's social or corporate or whatever.
Well, first of all, I feel like I should say that for a while now, I've kind of feel or felt that live streaming was a key part, was becoming more and more important, and a lot of the high tech groups that we work with are were already asking about it. One of our clients is a social media marketing world, which is
Oh yeah.
very involved with the social media and streaming. And last year we actually had a live stage with them, and we were going, live, throughout the day, scheduled live interviews and had dual hosts going on. So we have a history of it here, and I have often thought that it's going to be a very important part of doing live events in the future. So it's something that's been on our radar, and I think it's been on a lot of people's radar, and people have been using it. And now with what's happened, we have a situation where people who would normally love to travel, are familiar with events like this, appreciate the networking and the education that they get. They can not make those trips. They're stuck where they are.
Yeah.
Their clients, there are some clients that are postponing and canceling and things like that, but there are clients that can't do that. Their businesses won't allow that. Plus, also their businesses are kind of in the technology world, so you can't just bail because you can't have a live event. You still have to have your event. You have your people online. So there is that demand, and so we as an industry, obviously, we're losing a certain demand on one side. We need to compensate, and we need to pay attention to this other demand that's happening on the other side. So we have clients that are being brave and forward thinking, and are thinking about their membership and their attendees, and they're not canceling. They're kind of scaling back on what would be the live process, but now turning their attention towards live streaming, and doing a full-on live stream event. And I think one of the things we want to talk about today is how do you deal with a straight up live stream event? It's a big discussion we're having here. Internally, it's about how do we convert, how do we make the show exciting for people at home, make it a smooth show, make it a tight show, and make it something that the clients are going to get their return on their investment and reach their goals. So that's where our focus is, and I think because of what's happening. Now we have this audience at home that's going to get used to watching shows at home. They're going to get used to attending events at home. And I think that's going to
Yeah.
carry on to the future as well.
I agree. I think there are so many people that are going live right now that would never even have considered it 2 weeks ago. And I think that is really exciting too, because there is everything from, Mo Williams teaching kids how to doodle to, the zoo going live, which they were never live. So I think there's just a number of really great, some of our favorite bands are doing these little private concerts. So it's everything from entertainment to education to, I know a lot of the events that we work on or we support clients in, a number of reasons for the event is not just like engagement. I mean, that's a byproduct for sure. But I think there's also like a whole marketing, sales element, I don't think, it's not always like, to be social just to be social or entertain just to entertain. There's usually a fundamental goal, and sometimes it's specifically tied to revenue for that, to generate sales or exposure or all those things. So like you were saying, there's some clients that just don't have the luxury of going like, oh, well, we'll just figure out another way to like, and maybe they are to some extent, but they really do need to think of ways to engage when they can't personally, and there needs to be some sort of event, however that looks, whether it's virtual or some in person or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think in terms of live streaming, the landscape has gotten bigger and more approachable, and I think people are going to be more receptive of having that as a part of the event, so that people are really going to be more comfortable with going like, I'm going to go online and I'm going to comment. And I think it's just becoming a more familiar playground for all these different industries, which is exciting.
It's true. And I think I'm going to want to talk about this later as well. We have to listen to our clients, what their goals are, and try to adjust that. And really focus on their needs and what they're trying to put across to the members on the other side of the screen. Content is key. Content's always been important. I think in this case, we're getting down to where we're like producers. We're producing full shows that have to be focused and have to blend well, where we don't lose our audience. We have to keep their attention the whole time. With a live event, there's a lot of things going on with lights and music and that sort of thing. Something that doesn't translate to the screen, and we have to make it so the live show is keeping people engaged.
Well, and that leads me to my next question too, is that what are you guys doing at All-Star right now to kind of guide these clients that maybe have an event in April and still want to move forward with some sort of live stream element versus the clients that are looking at maybe an October date? You talked about content and goals, and maybe you just want to expand upon that, of how you guys are guiding clients through this difficult terrain and making that suggestion as like the event experts that you are.
Yeah, like I said, it starts off with listening to the client, and then it becomes about creativity, sitting down and brainstorming and figuring out the best way to execute what the client needs. And like I mentioned, we're expanding, and we were talking about the time that's available to us. We're using that time now to educate ourselves further about things that are available, that I'm now bringing in my expertise in video and video production, which an event company wasn't as much needed, but now, because we're talking about bringing in video elements, speakers that are from different locations, and creating videos that are maybe to enhance sponsorship and to make things blend well together, not to give away too much of what we're doing. But I think it goes to creating a show and having maybe an HQ where you come back to someone who's hosting a show or something like that. So you have to be inventive. And when you're talking about a larger show, maybe it's not a single set you're talking about. Maybe it's several setups. And if you're talking about a situation where you're at home and you can't work at home, you have to be very where you have a limited amount of people that you can have in a single room, and you have to have spacing. So all that sort of thing going on, all of that has to be planned. All those details need to be worked out. And I think that's where we are, as a company, where we working very carefully with our clients that are sticking around and we're listening to what they want to accomplish, and we're working with them as their agenda and their plans change. And we're talking about individual people, individual speakers all over the globe or all over America, and each individual has their own issue that they're dealing with and their own situation. So we can help navigate that sort of those sort of coordinating and logistics as well. So there's a lot of that going on.
No, absolutely. And I think that we, we'll just kind of see what the future holds this summer or even later this year of when are people going to be able to travel globally? When are people going to be traveling just nationally? And so I think we need to kind of come up with different scenarios for best case scenario and worst case scenario, and do some extra work and preparation. But live streaming, I think, is definitely a huge component of that, with all the elements, all the unknown elements going on right now.
Now, even the thing is about planning for live streaming, even if, let's say, doors open up and all of a sudden people can start traveling, there are going to be people who aren't going to be comfortable with traveling. There are going to be companies that are not in the position anymore to send their people on site. So even if you end up having people attending, your live streaming that you've set in place is still going to be useful. It's still going to be something that you're going to want to use and still going to be promoting, and you've already promoted. So I like we were talking about earlier in part one, it's something that's going to carry on. It's not going to be, yes, it's great. We have it for the current emergency, the crisis we're in, but it's going to carry on, and it's something we're going to be using in the future.
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the most amazing things you guys have helped kind of contribute to some of our followers and the network here is this 13 key questions that event planners should discuss with their clients. I'm going to share it here again in the group if I can, just in the comments, so people can link to that and download it. That should get up in just a second. I'm going to open it up online.
Drinking live on. It's not vodka, I promise.
Hey, you know what? It would be cool if it was. Just okay. Mine's not whiskey either. It's just coffee. Sure. Just coffee. I mean, what kind of mother am I? Okay, so you guys put together some great questions, and this is something that I provided for a lot of our followers in different arenas of planning, whether it's like choosing a venue or thinking about the food and beverage or thinking about a number of things. I think a lot of times you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know the right questions to ask. So if you have a client that says like, hey, I'd like to live stream, and as a planner, you're like, yeah, that sounds great. But they start asking you all these questions, and they're like, well, they have a fantasy idea of what it's going to entail or even cost. And I think that there are a number of considerations or even poignant questions to ask to even start. And so I think the All-Star Group has put together a very thorough kind of guide for event planners to start those conversations of like, okay, yes, you want to do a live stream, but here are some, like, before we push live, there's a number of things to consider that can impact logistics, execution, the audience experience, the goals, all those things. So There's a link to that so people can download that guide. But Richard, do you want to maybe we can dive into some of these questions since you guys were the ones that kind of put this together? I mean, some of them are a bit straightforward of like, what type of event are you planning and why would you like it streamed? I mean, that's a great location, a great place to start. But then there's like, where is the location? And I think when we were discussing in preparation for this, you brought up like how that's something that is maybe not the most straightforward element. If we are working with an event that's maybe in May, there might be multiple locations. There might be, an HQ location. You might have, Jen going live from her office, all the things, and then you have many different places. So I don't know how we want to, maybe we can go into some of these key questions and some elements that you guys have experienced, like working with planners, and some things that you guys think are really poignant to start the conversation.
Okay, well, absolutely. One thing that we found is that when we were talking to planners and different people about streaming their events, that there's this misconception, and this seemed to happen once this isolation started. There's a lot of people who are now making streaming available. There are a lot of options out there of how to stream, and there are folks with cameras that are saying, hey, I have the capability to stream your event. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of those options there's quite a few of those now out there. So we're researching those, which ones of those are legitimate, and planners have a lot of options. And when they're talking to their clients, when they come to us, a lot of times they're like, our clients would love to stream, and we started asking them questions, and they didn't have the answers. They didn't even approach their clients with the basic stuff. So we put this list together, and like you said, some of the questions seem simple, but are a little more complicated. The first one that we put down was, what type of event are you planning, and why would you like it streamed? Now, right now, what we're living through, they'll tell you what they're planning, and they'll tell you why they want it streamed. It's because their audience can't attend. It's pretty
right.
Forward. And then it goes to the next question, which is, where is the location? And we, like you just said, not a simple answer. And in some cases, if you're a planner and you're talking to clients, they may be stuck with a venue that they can't get out of, a contract that's complicated they're trying to navigate through. Maybe they get rid of half the room, but they got to keep the other half of the room. So you can make options available based on their situation. They may be stuck with that room, but if they're stuck with that room, how can you make that a benefit for them? And so I think that question, the location, the event space they're in, if they find that they're now without a space, that puts you in a position as a planner to find out what type of space would they like to move into. Talking about during the isolation period, can we work it? Can we do it with a small crew? Is it something that needs to be broken up and done in individual pieces and then pieced together after, and you get into that conversation? But figuring out the location may seem simple, like a simple question, but it's actually much more complicated.
Totally.
Events
in general, I feel like I think it's like, sorry to cut you off, but I feel like that's just, I think events from an outside perspective, we're like, oh, it's just so fun. It's just a party, or, oh, it'll be so easy. Or like clients would say like, oh, can we just, and you're like, can we just, like, there's nothing in events that can we just, unless it's like change out the color of the linen. That's the can we just.
Not that simple.
Nothing is ever that simple. It's always like, can we just add 200 more people to the event in our events next week? You're like, I mean, maybe, but it's not a flip of a switch. So I think that all these questions are incredibly important to discuss because they're not so just straightforward,
Right. A question like, where's your location? Let's talk about your location. That could end up being an hour conversation. Just there.
Totally. Okay, so then I mean, I think that kind of resonates with your third question, like what is being transmitted. That really does tie into some of the location stuff, but also like kind of equipment. And I think that's where things can get very expensive when we talk about event equipment stuff, or how many speakers, or what's the interaction. Would you say that that's a fair assessment, or as a planner, am I just jumping the gun that, that the equipment stuff's expensive?
No, you're probably right about that. It's not just the equipment now; it's also the bandwidth and the back end of everything. When it comes to live streaming, the other thing is about the scale of the show you're talking about. As a planner, if you're talking about a small show that's an hour long, and then you're maybe talking about a multifaceted show that has different elements going on, different rooms that are functioning, the equipment scales itself up from there. Are you using multiple screens? Are you using multiple cameras? And the sense of doing a live stream, having multiple cameras with a big show is probably the direction you'd want to go. You don't want to have just that back of the room vibe with a single camera. You want to get in on the close-up and all those sort of things. Multiple computer screens, the different graphics you're using, all that sort of thing. The videos you're going to be playing, that all plays into what's being put together, how it's going to be transmitted, the type of technology you would use to transmit it, and the end result where you're sending it to. Affected as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot to consider there. And I think that's kind of ties into what you were saying before, is that there really is a lot of options. It's not just like a point and shoot and stream, kind of like we're doing right now, where like, here you and I are just chatting, and like anybody can go on Facebook, and that's definitely an element. But I think what we're talking about with our clients definitely adds a level of complexity, where there needs to be that branding element, that integration, and like the audience perspective of, not just putting it out there just for the sake of, education and see who interacts. But I think it needs to be a bit more thought through, and there could be a keynote speaker and an MC, like you were saying, or even these breakout rooms where, and I think, was that something you guys did with the social media marketing world, were there different breakout rooms and that experience too?
No, not in that particular experience. That was set up as a live stage. The lighting was done different than any other stage at the venue. The lighting was done more as a studio setup. It was very done with the intention of feeling like you were watching television on your computer.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and it worked out well, and I think that it's a good option. But we also, like we were talking about earlier, the idea of using an MC to kind of blend and bring these things together is an idea I like. But we were talking also about the difference in the availabilities of the different technologies and the type of shows and what's being transmitted, going towards this question. We're talking about, from our perspective at All Star Group, about doing a professional show, a full-on live professional experience for the viewer. I'm not saying what we're doing here isn't professional. This is great. This is great. A great way to communicate with people.
Totally.
But you're talking about a big show where you're trying to get thousands of people engaged and that sort of thing. It needs to be handled by professionals. It needs to be professionally executed. It needs to be built by professionals. So I think when you're talking about what's being transmitted, from our perspective, it needs to be professionally done from top to bottom, every little bit. And that even includes if somebody's on an iPhone. If you have a keynote speaker speaking from an iPhone, you got to do everything you can as a production company, as a planner, as a client, make sure that person looks as good as they possibly can.
Totally.
That's part of it.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to go to the next question was
I
about
love
the type of connection.
it.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's also really important, and it has to do a little bit, and the transmitted question before this has to do a little bit with what happened to us today. Uh,
Yeah.
the Facebook platform, but it can, this what happened to us can happen. And if you're having a big show, that can be off-putting to the client, to the people who are watching. So you want a reliable platform, and that goes also to, you want a reliable connection. You can't have a connection
Yeah.
that's, we obviously in a big show situation, we want, a hardwired connection. We don't want it to be
Yeah.
just Wi-Fi or sharing Wi-Fi with a bunch of people who might be using it as well. So that's an important question as well.
No, I think so too. And I mean, even that is not like foolproof. When I did a live stream event in San Francisco at the Grand Hyatt in Union Square, we were hardwired and everything else, and we lost the internet connection at the very end. But that was because it went down for the whole square of Union Square, which is like unheard of. And it was one of those anomalies that would never ever happen again. But now it's like ingrained in my memory of that traumatic experience.
Right.
Luckily, it was at the very, very end where we lost the closing remarks. And not to say that wasn't important, but it was like a 3-hour program. And so we got through all of that and we lost a few minutes of the closing remarks, and there was really nothing you could do. So, but yeah, even that can be a bit challenging. But I think is the safest bet when it comes to a live stream is that you really need to make sure that you're dealing with top of the line equipment and professionals, and you just don't want to like take a chance because even with most of the foolproof things, like things can go unexpected, I guess, is my lesson learned on that.
But for those of us who've been in the business for a while, we know anything can happen.
Oh yeah.
I've had audio systems drop out. I've had cameras drop out. Any kind of technology can have an issue. So what you experienced is one of those things. But in general, hardwire is the best way to go and what we recommend to clients.
One of your questions is talking about what's the audience size, and why is that a consideration when you're talking about live streaming?
Well, we're finding out that the larger the audience, the more expensive it's going to be. Just the number of people who are tuning in. It's basically how the different platforms operate. We've been exploring the different options, live stream and the On24, the different options that are out there. There are quite a few now. And IBM, different things like that. And the prices seem to vary drastically. They have, a basic sign up, and then you start getting into the events and the number of attendees. It's a big part of the pricing. It's a big part of the type of planning and the bandwidth, all those sort of things. So it's very.
Sorry, I was gonna say it can get really expensive. And do you think, like you were saying, that like a lot of this pricing can vary? I mean, do you think with like that this is going to affect the overall pricing, where there might be a more approachable pricing for even some of those bigger names? Because I know working with On24 in previous events, like it can get extremely expensive just with like smaller audience. And I think that was a sticker shock to some of my clients that we're looking to do global streams. And I think it can vary, obviously, but just wondering if this might affect the supply and demand of it, or you think maybe the demand is high, so the price is going to stay the same.
Well, I promised myself I'd stay positive and upbeat during this conversation. So I'd like to think that as the demand and the use goes up, that and maybe during this time period, these companies will offer discounts, and but we've found some gouging going on as well. So I can't really answer that. I think my answer would be is do your due diligence. price things out.
A good recommendation.
You'll also find that clients have previous relationships with some of these folks. So you have to explore that and what that means. And then you have to take that and maybe offer a different option to the client. Say, well, you're spending this much because you have a previous relationship, but we can get you this much more by going with this group. So I think it's like any kind of price challenge that you might face. And right now, live streaming is very much in demand. So
yeah, I think I was just hopeful that like, oh, they're gonna, be in what, but then I thought at the same time, oh, it's demand. So what is the formula for capitalism?
People who are just getting into it and trying to get their foot in the door, prices might be really low, or they may set their price point really high to give you the impression that they have experienced. So you have to just be careful.
Yeah, no, those are all very good recommendations. Okay, back to your questions. Talked about the target audience. Maybe talk about the length of the program too, and how that affects some of the elements.
Well, the next two questions kind of go together. It's what is the length of your program, and where will this be broadcasted? The length of your program is really, really important. The amount of storage space you may need. Also, if you want to store your and have your programs available on demand, that could really drive your costs up. If you're doing an hour program or doing a 3-day event, the difference in the cost is drastic. So that's a key question, especially if you're talking to somebody who's trying to determine what they're going to do during this particular time period. They may be going from a 3-day event to an hour event or a 3-hour event. So that gets into discussing, the content that's going to go into that time period. But really, that main point of that question is to get a gauge of how much time you're going to need from the server, from your platform, and it's very important. And right now, with a lot of clients who are rejiggering their shows and everything, they're not sure. So by asking a question, you're making it a point to them to understand that this is an important decision to make, and maybe a decision they make up front before they get too deep into it.
Yeah, because I know with On24, I mean, like every platform is different. I've only had experience with that company. Is that in the contract that we had, it was a certain number of minutes, like 90 minutes was one price, and then to add an additional 30 minutes was exceptionally more. And then if you went over the overage charge, which happened with the group, that was a sticker shock with some stuff. So I would say for my previous experience, I would recommend like just reading those contracts very, very thoroughly as it pertains to hourly rates, because those are very strict. And if you go over even a minute, you will get a very expensive post-event bill that might not be a consideration for the budget, and also won't look good with you and your client too. So read the contract terms and kind of understand like what's included, and really have a very kind of working with a team like yours and understanding what is the production elements, and making sure that you're planning that out pretty thoroughly so you can budget accordingly.
Basically, that's the idea of this questionnaire, is to get that information up front, kind of give your client a little bit of a heads up where cost could be impacted, get those answers, and then you can come to a group like us. We can price out the entire project, and you can really break it down where savings can, where you can save, where you can maybe invest a little bit extra to ramp up your stream, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so where will this be broadcasted? That goes to the different formats, different platforms. Maybe you're not just broadcasting to one platform. Maybe you want to broadcast to multiple platforms. So understanding what your clients' expectations are, where they're going to want to see these things. Maybe not
Mhm.
everything has to be live. Maybe after the live segment goes out, you can cut it and do shorter versions on the other platforms. So
Yeah.
that's a discussion, that's a brainstorming thing. And then the next question is, does this need to be live, on demand, or both? This also applies to the different platforms that are available as far as storing your show, how long you're going to want to store it, password protection, people going in and buying access to your content. So there are a lot of options when it comes to this sort of thing, and we are navigating through those options and putting together packages to let clients know the different levels of going live and then going on demand, how to present that to their attendees. Attendees who are overseas may not be able to show up for the live broadcast, so they to have it on demand would be key.
Yeah.
In some cases, some clients will take it and take the product and put it on their own website. So
Yeah.
they need that storage. They don't need that expense. So that's something to take into consideration.
That's a good point. Yeah, I've had some groups that have just done the record, and then it was like a program where it was different speaker sessions, and so each session was, the whole program was like 3 hours, but each session was about 30 to 45 minutes. So we cut that, and that was turned into smaller webinars that they ended up repurposing a number of different ways, whether it was on their website or also like hosting webinars that weren't live. So I think it was a way to kind of have that content. And I think as any business, like, we're all about content, whether we're content on social media or content on our website or content in general. So I think there is an opportunity here to maybe capture that content that is not just in person and then repurpose it in a number of ways and experiences. So I think that's a great opportunity with this kind of video recording, live stream repurposing of stuff.
That's, it's actually one of the things at All Star we're expanding. It's something that we do and we've done in the past, but now it's becoming more and more important to what we do. The video production side, the video post production that will need to happen. And we talked about a little bit earlier, and I think it's on the list here, about sponsorships, different sponsorship opportunities. You don't have that in-person situation going on where you got banners up and different things going on and little video screens running. You need to incorporate that into what you're doing. So
I think that kind of goes back to the element about the password protection and kind of thinking about the event from like a revenue model. Now, working with the clients, obviously we sometimes support them in promotion of ticket sales, or maybe there's sponsorship sales to the event in a number of different ways. So there might be a password protection element, and that's why kind of you pose that question, because this may have been a conference ticketed event. Now all of a sudden it's a virtual event, and now you're going to need to password protect that, and that's a consideration because there is still going to be expenses tied with the event. They're going to be a little bit different, but there's still going to be expenses, or this might be an element of, driving some revenue for the company, the organization, or whatever it is. And I think sponsorship is also a consideration. So as planners, we work with clients a lot and really are always worried about their bottom line. If we're supporting any of the revenue, we're also, obviously tied with a lot of the expenses. But sometimes we can have some opportunity for expenses if we can bring in some more revenue and we can make things more exciting. I know from my perspective, sometimes I'm like, well, if we get a sponsorship for here, we can make this other thing more exciting. But I think we need to start rethinking that And I know sponsorship is definitely an element for a lot of nonprofits that I work with, and also corporations that are hosting a number of things. So maybe we can talk about some of the opportunities for sponsorship that could be ingrained if you wanted to, kind of consider other revenue elements. And I think you were starting to touch upon this, where we can't do the live huge banner, and maybe it's not on the lanyard that people are wearing, but what are some other ways that people can think about sponsorship with their event?
Well, yeah, and it's kind of goes to what we're talking about, the on-demand question. And there's so many opportunities for branding, and there's so many opportunities for sponsorship branding when you get into video. I not only am I have a history of in the event industry for a long time, but I also have a long history in video production, and the two kind of go in hand for me. A good show has good video in it. There's just I kind of feel like they go hand in hand. So when we get into creating video for a streaming situation and an on-demand situation, there's a lot of places to drop in branding and sponsorship, whether it's an opening title that comes up at the beginning of a video, or at the end, or during the video it's mentioned, or within the video, the decor and the scenic that goes on has branding within it that highlights the sponsor and highlights the event information, and it goes on from there. There are things that you can do within the program to highlight sponsors and to highlight, in the sense of, like, if you're losing an exhibit floor, you can kind of bring the exhibit into the presentation. And that kind of also depends on the limitation the client might have within the program. But there are many, many opportunities. And we even have talked about the idea of, we're doing these kind of as live shows. So the idea of maybe incorporating pseudo commercials into the presentation. So I'm giving you a little bit of stuff here, but
yeah, I mean, that's a great, I love that idea, because we're going to need to find, it can't just be like a logo, I think we're going to need to think of different, think outside the box here. Sponsorship is going to need to be an element. We're going to, these events, however they look, whatever they look like, are going to need money to help produce them for a number of reasons. And I think we're also going to need to think of just in the way that, like, Facebook ads, and that became like a new thing. I think we're going to need to rethink how we incorporate and do that interaction, or something more entertaining and something more grabbing. And I think a commercial or some sort of like segment that highlighting that sponsor is a really great idea.
Well, that's a whole other thing, is the fact that, since you're talking about now, you have an event that's internet based. There's all opens up the doors to the internet advertising, the type of marketing, which might be considered a secondary thing at a typical event, now becomes a featured thing that you'd want to incorporate into your marketing. Social media marketing would become key because your event is on social media.
Completely. But then there's that whole element of then production, like kind of having your team basically work with probably a client to create something like that, because I don't think a lot of these companies are going to have departments or something already pre-built. It's going to be well beyond, like, just send me your PNG logo, or it's going to be far beyond that. And I think they're going to need to rely on companies like yours to produce something a little bit more creative and eye-catching to showcase that value too. I mean, from a client perspective, then to the sponsorship too. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And we would count on planners to go and to talk to the client, speak with the client, and get that perspective, get that, what are they open to? What are their, who are their really important sponsors they really want to focus on? Would they consider, having, putting together a promotional video for the sponsor as part of the package? Do they want, how far do they want to go to make their sponsors happy, and to how can we help to make that happen? And like we had talked about a little bit earlier, we have expertise that we utilize during our usual situation, but now we're really coming to the forefront during this crisis, where video production, things that we might do on the side, now is becoming very important.
Well, that's kind of exciting. I mean, I know we're in a pandemic.
I love video production. Any chance to bring it into an event?
I think it's exciting. I mean, I think it. With a background in nonprofit fundraising, I think that the models for sponsorship engagement have been lackluster for many years. And I think kind of tough, because I think it's hard to see the ROI from a corporate standpoint of like, do I put up a banner? Is it going to be seen? Is there the data or the analytics to go behind that? And I think this new element of video production and kind of keeping and putting things in a more virtual respect, you really can count eyeballs to things. And I think maybe even count clickable rates or something like that. So from a planning slash, if you're someone who goes after sponsorship, this might provide you with analytics that actually are really compelling, that can resonate even with a company that's investing in sponsorship and go like, wow, this is really, we did this and it turned into XYZ, and we were able to track it with analytics, where you can't really do that if you have the backdrop banner or you're on the step and repeat banner or whatever at XYZ event. I think it's you're just guessing. So
and actually what you're just saying goes right into the next question, is about audience response. Does the client want the audience to respond? Or be able to respond and interact? I would imagine in most cases the client's going to go yes, because they want to have that interaction, and that's what's going to be missing from your live experience. In the past we've used technology that can now translate to this experience as well. So not everything has to be reinvented. You can use it. Certain technologies that have been used for live production can still be utilized online to interact with audiences, to do polling and that sort of thing. Obviously here in our situation, we can get questions in, and that applies to the other formats that we've talked about. And I think that type of thing, that audience interaction, can also play into sponsorship opportunities and into branding opportunities, because a lot of these polling programs and apps allow you to drop in your own graphics and drop in your own visuals, and you can incorporate sponsorship and that sort of thing into that as well. So you have to find them. They're all scattered around, but there are many opportunities to take advantage of to make your sponsors happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think also a positive thing about this is that it could even translate into more people taking action. Because like, what is the whole reason behind sponsorship? You want someone to take action and buy the thing or the service, or, buy the product or the service that you're selling. That's the whole, I mean, if we cut it down to like, the very simplistic matter is that like, they're not sponsoring just because they want to, write somebody a check. It's for promoting something, a service or a product or whatever. And if you have it in the sphere where it's like people are right there, right in front of them, I think the likelihood of them taking action, if you do it in a creative manner that like catches them, it's far more engaging than say like a swag bag. I mean, nothing against a swag bag and a branded squishy or a USB drive. But I've never been driven to take action by a branded USB drive. And not that it's not, functional. But maybe
I have a whole drawer full of them.
Yeah, or even like the chargers, like the, the portable chargers. Those are like I have like a bunch of those too, and I couldn't name one of the companies that's on those things right now. And those are they're not inexpensive. I priced them for clients, and it didn't. I mean, maybe it did work for some people. I'm just not that person, but I don't think the tangible, the swag thing, drove a huge percentage to actually take action. So if you're a company who's wanting, that to really happen, maybe that this is an opportunity for more increased gain on percentage or whatnot.
You get the you can see the click through right away, and your audience literally, like you're saying, it's like one click away. Just reach over and they're right there. So you make clickable link for your client, for your sponsor, and they're right there. Yeah, I agree. I think it's all about, if you're, as a planner, you're trying to sell a client, there is a way to sell it. There are sponsorship opportunities. There is an ROI, across the board.
Yeah. I kind of see it in a really positive, like more beneficial thing for corporations for sure. Did we get through a lot of our questions on our list?
Well, we did. I mean, there's the. Do you want the audience to be able to respond? Will you want the broadcast to utilize event graphics and branded templates? We talked about that a bit. Will you want to restrict access, password protection? We talked about that a little bit, and I think that's a key one. One thing I did want to mention about that is there's this kind of, it happens at live events, and it should happen as well on live streaming events, is the kind of the upsell, the VIP room, the people that are returning over and over again, that you want to give them that extra benefit. Maybe there's a side interview that's conducted, or there's a breakout session that's strictly for VIPs that you make accessible only to people with that particular password. I think that's another sponsorship opportunity, another potential return on investment as well.
That's so good. I'm writing that down. Good. You've given us a lot of great, so many good details. And that is, I think it's, you got it. We still got to warm everybody up to this. We're definitely getting our feet in the pool right now with this, and being, subjected to stay at home, and we're online all the time. But I think it's going to be a little bit of a transition for a number of things: the client perspective, the attendee perspective, the sponsorship, all those different things. But I think you might need to do some things for free that maybe were like a really expensive ticket thing, and then think about the upsell. It's a great suggestion.
Thanks.
You're welcome. You're so smart. What would be for planners? For planners, what would you also give as like an advice of like, okay, so we've got a client that's looking for streaming stuff. I mean, does All Star go? Are you guys like national? Do you guys go all over? If someone wanted to give this a go, but they really had no experience or very limited experience, like what would be kind of beyond the questionnaire? Then like what would be kind of next steps for them?
Well, the answer to the first question is we're all across the United States. We do events all over the United States, and even go outside of the United States, but our main focus is here in the US. Okay. And we have resources throughout the US as well. So we have the ability to put on shows all over the nation. And we also have our own trucking, and we're well versed in all of these sort of things. And the main point of the questionnaire was to give it to planners to get those answers and be able to bring those answers to us, and then we can help build a show from that point and offer our resources to the planners, and really turn it into a professional, the show that the planners and the clients are expecting. I guess the next steps would be to reach out to us. We can, we have, I think on the sheet, we have our contact information. You can go directly to info@theallstargroup.net. You can reach out to me, Richard. Randy is our leader here, and Kristen is in charge of sales. Basically, if you put my name in front of @theallstargroup.net, you can reach me there. And I'm sure Glennie will post our information.
Yeah, so it's so there's a link that I shared earlier that actually I put it on some fancy paper, but it does have all your contact information, all the good stuff, and then it's also on the website on theeventindustry.com. There is a blog post about it, and I'll share that with everybody later. So there's definitely some contact information there. And one thing I would just kind of put out there for planners. If you don't decide to contact All-Star and you decide to kind of go rogue or talk to a company, that you maybe consider someone who has some experience with this. Just like you wouldn't want your brother-in-law who's never been a contractor to kind of take down walls. For your house, maybe he can do that for his own house. So that you just would want to go with a company that has some experience doing this, knows the technology, knows the challenges, and not to say for not supporting businesses that are just starting off, but I think as planners, if you don't have a ton of experience yourself and you're really new to the game on this, you really want to make sure that you are guiding yourself and you're being guided with your client by a company like All-Star that has all this experience, knows all this knowledge, is going to make sure you cover all the bases. So there's no pitfalls or no things that are just like pops up, which, can happen. If you don't have a ton of experience, you don't have some experience of like knowing what can go wrong. So you're not going through all the procedures, because I think we all can resonate with planning. It's not about like what can go right. It's like what can go wrong. So we're always trying to think about what can go wrong in the situation, and we're making all of the adjustments and having all the things in place to make sure that it doesn't go wrong. So just wanted to add that out there for planners, is make sure that they go with someone like All-Star or a company that's been around, that knows what they're doing, especially for your first go at this, for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. And just I mentioned to you, and when we were talking earlier, the last question, the 13th question on the list, it says, will you need more than one channel? And that leads to a lot of technical questions. If you're going to be doing not just one stream, if you're going to offer several streams, or you're going to have multiple breakouts happening while there's a main session going on, if it's that type of event, it leads into more technical questions, more things that need to be discussed with your client and between us as a production company and as a planner. So the 13 questions will get you going, get you started. It's a really large project and you need our expertise, you need our help, please call on us. We're available.
Well, Randy, Richard, sorry.
Randy.
I don't know why I just called you Randy.
Randy's awesome. We love Randy here, and he's brilliant. He's very creative, and you'd be lucky to have his designs on your show.
I would. I love you guys all. I love the whole All-Star team. Love working with you in the past, and definitely hope to work with you on some events later this year. And just think you guys are brilliant. And when it comes to a number of things, you guys are the experts in the industry. And I'm so excited to have you in the same city with me in San Diego. And you guys make my job a lot easier as a planner, supporting all the things. And it's all about like coming together so we can thrive. And knowledge is power for sure. And you guys were been so generous with your time today and all this information. So, so thank you, Richard, not
Thank
Randy.
you.
Hi, Randy. Thank you for joining us.
Jan, I'm a big fan. I look forward to next week, and thanks for having me.
All right, guys. Everybody have a good weekend. See you next week.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.